and welcome to the Huntington Way. My name is Pearl Sonnenschein.
And I'm Lenie Castro.
And in today's episode, we'll be talking about the role of parent-teacher organizations in the school and other ways that parents can get involved in their child's education.
Let's start with the meaning of acronym for PTA or PTO. PTO stands for Parent-Teacher Organization, and PTA stands for Parent-Teacher Association. The PTA is a national organization that helps groups of parents build a presence in their schools in order to best serve students. PTO is different from PTA in that it is a local, independent parent group unaffiliated with the national PTA organization. PTOs are not usually involved in national efforts, but rather focus their energy and resources on local schools and districts.
So let's talk a little bit about the beginnings of this idea of parents being involved in the schools with parent-teacher organizations and associations. The PTA, the Parent-Teacher Association, was the first parent-teacher organization that existed in the United States. It began in 1897 when two women started what was at the time called the National Congress of Mothers. And the goal of this organization was to get parents involved in their child's education, especially in the school buildings. And the National PTA at the time also established programs in order to benefit students in schools that actually still benefit students today. They have had an impact in national legislation related to child labor laws, lunch programs, arts and education, immunization, school safety, and even the creation of kindergarten classes.
That's right. Today, the PTA and PTO play a role in much more. They organize school events such as talent shows, fundraisers, clubs, Teacher Appreciation Week, yearbook, spirit wear, and field trips.
Another piece that made the PTA extremely helpful for schools and families is the spread of information. At the time, when the PTA first started getting its legging, the PTA made materials related to bullying, ADHD, parent involvement, child development, and safety in schools, and much more of that kind of information more accessible to parents. Now, today, with the age of the internet and seemingly unlimited information, the spread of information is not as much of a selling point for PTAs.
And more recently, there has been a decline in PTA participation and membership, largely because of the membership dues. PTA requires annual membership dues, and each state has designated their own membership amount. For example, $2.25 for each PTA member's dues goes to the National PTA, which helps pay for leadership, training, and support, volunteer training, and membership growth. Some of the dues also goes toward the state PTA. The majority of dues for PTA go towards programs and services related to the local school. Meanwhile, for PTO, individual PTOs can choose to request membership dues or not. If they do charge dues, the entire amount collected stays at the school rather than going to the national organizations.
And with funding, something else to consider is whether or not the group is a federally recognized 501c3 organization. For the PTA, the cost of being a 501c3 is included in the membership dues. For a PTO, if they want to be considered a 501c3 organization, they might consider including that in their dues.
And so, why is having a PTA or PTO involvement in a school important? Well, it helps build community. Students need a sense of community in order to feel safe and successful at school. If parents and staff are happy, there is a higher likelihood the students will be happy too. Parent organizations like this also allow parents to connect with each other to be a support system. And the same can be said about parents and teachers connecting with each other, depending on how involved the teachers are with their school's PTA or PTO.
And honestly, schools would be in a world of hurt without our parents, which is one of the reasons why many inner city schools, students who attend those schools struggle is because their parents aren't able to be involved in their education simply because many of them work multiple jobs and just don't have the time. As a former public school educator, the parent council at my school helped create the positive community that I associate the school with. They were supportive in Teacher Appreciation Week, as well as student activities, including helping with prom and other student council events. Lenny, when you were a teacher in the Philippines, or even when you worked at a school here in Colorado Springs, was there much parent involvement?
Yes, I noticed that, especially when I was in the Philippines, of course. I have a lot of students, and the importance of a PTA and PTO in the Philippines is very important because it really helped us in molding the students. And it also gives sense to the students because they saw their parents that they are involved in their education. So the more the parents are involved, the more they progress as well. And the students can also see that the leadership is in there because their moms or their dads or anyone member of the family is involved in the education. So they can see the leadership, and that's the start of being a leader as well in their classrooms. So it's really important. And when I was involved here in the Colorado Springs in one of the schools, I saw as well many parents are being involved in the organization.
That's great. Yeah, and definitely so important. I know, especially for elementary schools, a lot of parents come and volunteer to be chaperones on field trips or come and help in the classroom, which makes a huge difference. We talked about some of the differences between the PTA and PTO, and it might make someone question which organization is better and if there's even friction between the two. But my thought is that as long as the school is working towards building community and benefiting students, then why does it matter what the organization is?
I agree. There might be some stigma behind PTA or PTO, but both organizations have the same goal, and that is to accomplish the goals of serving the students and the teachers and the schools as well. An article on PTO Today's website points out some essential similarities between the two. Both have committed, generous volunteers that work towards the same goal for fostering school, nurturing schools.
And for parents who work and might not be able to get as involved in their school's PTA or PTO, how can they get involved? Well, you can volunteer when you can. You don't need to be an officer or primarily involved in the structure or the setup of the actual organization, but you can still volunteer your time. You can also donate money or contribute to a potluck. I know that there are some PTA, PTO potlucks for teachers and staff. So that's definitely a good way to contribute as well.
Glad that you pointed it out. What do we mean by that is that let's just make the students happy, also the teachers and staff of the school, because the more involved the parents are, the more it's going to be successful for the students. When we come back from our break, Pearl will be interviewing Jennifer Mattis, the PTO president of Academy International Elementary School. But first, our weekly tip for students.
This week's tip is keep your backpack organized. The number of students I had that would stuff their backpacks full of crumpled up assignments was astonishing. Students would lose assignments left and right, and even if they finished a homework assignment, sometimes they wouldn't be able to turn it in because it was lost in the shuffle of their backpack.
Right. Keeping folders and binders is the key. Some students prefer to have one big binder full for all of their classes, while other students do better with multiple folders, one for each class. Whichever works for you, stick with the system so that your backpack doesn't look like a tornado run through it.
Trust us, organizing your backpack will make a world of difference. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'll be chatting with Jennifer Mattis about her involvement in her school's PTO.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back. I am here with Jennifer Mattis, the PTO president of Academy International School in District 20. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. So tell us about the PTO at Academy International.
So our PTO was set up, the school was established, I believe, in 1998. And the principal at that time, Jim Mahoney, was insistent that the parents create their own organization that runs to support the school. He felt it should be separate from the school, so they could run it, not the teachers or the staff running it. It was a separate entity to support teachers and the students. We currently have 10 board members. There's 5 core. There's a president, a first and second vice president, a secretary and treasurer. Those are your core that you're required to have. And then we have 5 additional. And those have varied over the years between like fundraising, book fair, volunteer coordinator, the packets that go home with the students, parent sounding board, media. And again, those 5 have changed over the years as we've evolved. So it's a great core group of 10 people.
Okay, great. And what has your involvement looked like?
This year, I am the PTO president. So I've served on this board for 3 years, starting when my child was in 2nd grade. And I've served 3 different positions. I've done, the first year I was 2nd vice president. Then I did parent sounding board, which is a D20. We can go into that. And then this year I am president.
Okay, and have you been enjoying the position so far?
Very much so, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Now, some schools, and we talked about this in our first segment, but some schools call it PTA, some PTO.
Mm-hmm.
What have you noticed to be the main difference between the two, if any?
Before I go into difference, the similarity is it's an amazing group of volunteers that just want to help the school to be better and supplement and show teachers are appreciated and add student experiences. The differences are just the support. So as you had said in the beginning, PTA is a national organization and state organization that you pay dues into. And it's actually, they're kind of evolving to become similar because PTO, there's now an organization called PTO Today that we don't pay dues to, but it gives us equal support for that. But then PTA does have a little more political involvement, like with lobbyists and that sort of thing.
Okay. And what are the differences, similarities between being involved in a PTO at an elementary school versus a middle school or high school? Because you're primarily involved with the elementary school.
Correct, but I do have 2 high schoolers, so I've attended meetings, but I don't want to claim involvement or that
Sure.
I've run anything. But they're all of them are fantastic. The big difference I've seen is parent involvement, which makes sense because a lot of parents, once they go to middle school, then everybody goes back to work. Makes sense. And then also in middle school and high school, the kids end up taking over. So the kids can run the programs and you don't need as many chaperones for a field trip. And so, but on that being said, it's still it's challenging to find volunteers at the elementary level, but it gets harder and harder as the kids get older. But the needs are still the same because we still want to support the teachers and supplement school activities.
Definitely, yeah. And what does your relationship between parents, teachers, and administrators look like at your school being involved in the PTO?
It's fantastic. So we've been parts of, just through chance, 5 different schools in D20, and every one of them, such a fantastic relationship. It's one of the reasons I love D20, just between the administrations, teachers, and parents. We know we have to work together. And again, I'm not an educator, so I can't, but I can support them in any way that I can. And this is my little way to give back and support. But yeah, the schools, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's always a fantastic, the teachers are very appreciative of what we can do. The parents, I'm appreciative of the teachers and the administration. We're just a little piece that can help make their day better.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about the logistical side behind being the PTO president? Like, what does that even look like? You know, do you have monthly meetings? How do you coordinate different things?
Absolutely. So ours, everyone runs differently. And that's what's so wonderful about a PTO is there's some basics, you have to bylaws and you have your core group of people, but you can run it any way you want to. We're required to have 5 meetings a year, and but we've definitely surpassed that. We have 2 a month, but one of them is a general membership meeting for everybody. And then we have another meeting just for the board members. So we alternate, so that way the board discusses what do we want to bring up at our next meeting. And as we're planning events, we're like do the background work, and then we present it to the membership as a whole.
And what made you decide to get involved in the PTO in the first place? Because you got involved 3 years ago, right?
I've always dabbled.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're a military family, so we lived out of state. So I've always attended here and there, but there's such a stigma that goes with PTs and PTOs, and some people talk about drama and this. I've never ever experienced that anywhere I've been. Every time I've been a part of it, I'm just like, these people are wonderful people. They're here to help, and I want to be a part of that. And I would go to a meeting and I would hear what they talk about, and I thought, wow, they have a heart, they have a pulse on the school and what's going on. And I wanted to do that. I didn't know the teachers. I didn't know the staff. I wanted to be a part of that and learn the school and the culture that my children are a part of. And so once I got involved, I realized, oh, it's not hard. Like, we all have the skills to do whatever we can. And I've really enjoyed my piece and my time in the PTO.
And have you noticed that there are parents who aren't super involved, but every once in a while they, volunteer their time or something?
Absolutely. And there are some people that I've never even seen because they choose. Some people, their passion is to, if they can help in the classroom and just work with the students and be additional help for the teachers. Some work in the library, just shelving books. Some like to be in the front office. Yeah, at one of the schools, I worked in the front office 1 day a week for 2 hours. And that's what I could contribute, and I loved doing that for that school. That was School in the Woods, by the way,
Oh,
which is
nice.
wonderful. And so, yeah, it's everybody just, I'm going to back up. Another reason that got me involved is a previous PTO president, when I first joined Academy International, she spoke up and talked at the back to school night. And she had said, we all have very busy lives. We work, we do this, we have kids, we have families, we have obligations. Pick one thing about your school that you'd like to participate in and just do it, whether it's 1 day event, a 1 hour event, if it's one fundraiser. You don't have to, and that's another misconception where people think they're going to get sucked in and pulled in and have to commit 40 hours a week. That's not the case at all. You find where your passion is, and you just, if every parent or caregiver could just pick one thing, every slot would be full.
Right.
That would be wonderful.
Right.
That's my ideal. And I got that from her, and I've always carried that on.
What a great message for
Yes.
parents who, feel like they don't have the time, and some simply don't. But I mean, maybe 30 minutes a week contributing, or even just, once a year fundraiser. I can definitely see that being more, what's the word? I don't know. More manageable. I
Yes,
guess.
exactly. Yeah, whether it's just stapling or cutting out things for your teacher.
Right.
What a wonderful way to help.
Exactly. Yes. So can you talk a little bit about PTO and the benefit that it gives students more specifically? We've kind of mentioned in general that it's helpful for students, but how does it benefit students?
So we supplement, because we don't teach, we don't educate, we don't make that is not our
Right.
lane. But I'd like to say that we supplement. So right now, one of the things that our PTO does, we run our science fair. Next week, or coming up in May, is one of our biggest events of the year. It's called International Tour Day. And so we organize, and this year I'm so excited, we have 27 presenters coming. And each classroom becomes its own country. And the kids get a little passport, and they've picked out where they want to go, and they go to each country throughout the day and experience that. And that's something, it wouldn't happen without the PTO. And we love that. Then we do a lot of community building too, family dance night, movie nights. Some schools I know have supplement field trips. We haven't had to do that, but that's always a thing. And fundraisers, I should say fundraisers benefit the students because we are able to give teacher grants so they can provide more opportunities for their students as well.
Very cool. Wow. I really like that idea of having different countries represented in the classrooms. What a
an
cool
unbelievable
event. Yeah.
And it's unique. I know other schools have done it, but I feel like it makes our school unique.
Definitely. And it makes sense for Academy International, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I'm curious what challenges your PTO has encountered, especially during the height of COVID these past couple of
Yes.
years.
So 2 major challenges. The first is not being able to be in the building, and which we understand, absolutely. That was what was safest at the time. So new teachers have come in the building, so we don't have that. We've lost that connection, and we want to rebuild that connection with our teachers. And then the other thing that we've lost is momentum. So every year we have these events, and we can reach out to new parents and, oh, hey, would you be willing to do this next year? Well, with 2 years not being in the building, we don't know who the parents are. We haven't been able to make those connections. So in the beginning of this year, when we were allowed back in the building, we had our first big event. We had a field day, and we got volunteers, but we didn't get as many as we've had in the past. And we were just a little worried, concerned, because we're saying, wow, we've lost our momentum, was the phrase. And we just had an event last week. We had a big fundraiser fun run, and the volunteers showed up, and it was so wonderful. And we're getting that momentum back that we've lost from the past 2 years, and hopefully reaching out to the younger parents of like the kindergartners and the first graders who have never seen us or experienced these events, and hoping to get them involved in stepping up.
Yeah. And I do think, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but having the first event be something outdoors, so maybe people felt more comfortable.
Yes.
I don't know if that was a factor, but
Absolutely it was.
yeah, yeah, and hopefully it does continue to grow. So you talked about some initiatives, some activities that you've done in the past. I know you mentioned the international or the country fair. Are there any other initiatives or activities that you're working on right now?
So again, it's I feel personally that it's to make those connections with teachers, because with our fundraising we have grants, and and the purpose of our grants are to provide things to the teachers to support all of the students. And in the past we'd get several grants a year, grant requests, and then our PTO votes on them and decides whether or not we'd like to use the money for that. And because we haven't been in the building, we haven't had any money to spend. We have the money, but we haven't had anything to spend it on because everybody's been in their core groups. And it's letting these new teachers know, hey, we're here for you. We want to help you. What can we do to help you? And so to me, that's we're still wanting to bring back our events and such, and our movie nights and our dance, because we didn't have a family dance this year. But for me personally, I'd like to make those connections with the teachers and say, hey, we're here for you. What can we do for you?
Definitely, yeah. That community building is so important.
Yes.
And what about any future plans for the PTO?
So future plans is passing the torch. So there are three of us on the current board that our kids are aging out this year. And so we want to pass the torch on to the next group. And what I've loved about PTO is it's not set in stone. It's always evolving and changing. So that's another thing as I'm trying to recruit new people. It's, hey, if you don't like the way it's set up, come on in and change it. We're just volunteers. We're not, this is not a paid position. If you don't like the way this is set up, like this year we adapted, our movie night used to be indoors in the gym. Well, because of COVID, we said, hey, let's do it outside. We used to do it, just whatever happens, I'm always telling my board, if you don't like it, let's change it. If this isn't working anymore, we may have done it this way for 5 years, but now we're not doing it anymore. And the other big thing, this one's kind of said, if we don't have a volunteer for it, we're not going to do it. Because if I don't have someone to step up, there's no reason for us to work 80 hours a week and kill ourselves over something. So that's why I want to encourage new people, bring your new ideas, bring whatever you think that you would like to see in the school. We would love to have you and have your help.
Great. And your son is in, what grade is he in?
Fifth grade.
Okay. So now when he moves on to middle school, I don't know if you even know the answer to this yet, but do you foresee yourself continuing the PTO at Academy International? Do you see yourself getting involved in either his middle school or your other children's high school?
I've always got to touch it. Right now, this year I don't have a middle schooler, but when my other two did go to middle school, I did attend some of the meetings and helped with a couple of events, again, where I could, because at the time my focus was the elementary. Again, it's to have that pulse and hear what's going on in the middle schools and high schools, because that's very important. Because back to your previous question, when we talk about involvement, the other wonderful thing I've seen about our D20 schools, whenever I've been to a PTO meeting or PTA or parent meeting or whatever the organization, the principal is always there. It's incredible. And so if you have questions, they're very transparent and, okay, here's what's going on. And that's where I've gotten so much information just to learn about the culture of my kids' schools. So yeah, I haven't decided what I'm going to do in the future, but my involvement with AIES is over because I feel like, okay, my time is complete. And again, it's passing the torch onto the next generation of parents that will be there.
And how does it work when you're deciding who will be, the president or the other different officer roles? How does that process go?
Sometimes there's begging involved. So that's why I laugh. It's like, I know when I first joined, I saw the job descriptions and I thought, okay, I don't want to do this, but maybe I want to. So I looked and saw, okay, I would love to do this. So that's where my specialty was. And so some people said, yeah, that's what happened. Some people stepped up and said, oh, that looks interesting. I'd like to do this. And other times it's, hey, would you mind? What do you think about doing this position next year? And this one was a struggle because we've lost to the momentum, but we do have a full board of 10 wonderful parents that have stepped up to continue next year.
Okay. So there's no voting. It's just volunteer.
I'm sorry. Yes, there is voting.
Okay.
But there was no competition. It's
Right.
So it was a more formality to vote them in because we had 10 candidates and 10 slots. So it worked out perfectly.
Okay, yeah, that is great. So for parents who are wanting to get involved, how can they get involved? Where can people find more information?
So, yes, and as we talked about earlier, whether you work full-time, part-time, whatever your situation, there's always something that you can do. And it's not necessarily, I mean, we send out flyers saying, here's where we need help. We post on our Facebook page, here's where we need help. But I think, start with the teacher and say, what can I do for you? And then we send out a sheet at the beginning of every year saying, here's all of our events. Are you interested in any of them? And then we kind of take that and go from there on each activity. So, but things are always coming up and needing help, whether it's cutting, stapling, setting things up, taking things down. Like you said, the appreciation dinners and all that. So it's read the materials, read the emails that come home. Which I know a lot of us, we get so many emails, but that's where all the information is that come from the school.
And for those of you who are listening or watching, I'm sure you can go to your district's website to learn more about your specific school's PTO or PTA. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here, being our guest, telling us about your involvement. It's been a pleasure. This has been the Huntington Way. My name is Pearl Sonnenschein, and we'll catch you next time.